This is John Howell Essential Cuts, your daily rundown of the best from today's show on 890 WLS.
Well, somebody in L.A., in or around L.A., is holding a $1 billion Powerball ticket. I'm guessing it's not Alex Stone, who's still on the job for ABC News in Los Angeles. Alex, any new news on who might have won $1 billion?
Trust me, if it were me, I would not be chatting with you right now. So, no, we don't know yet. $1.08 billion is what they're sitting on, and somebody's got it. Nobody knows who it is. There was a lady who showed up today in front of microphones at the mini mart where the ticket was sold. She was crying and hugging everybody and claiming that she won. Maybe she did, but the California Lottery is saying they don't know who won. That lady didn't have a ticket to show anybody. Nobody has claimed it. The owners of the store where it was bought, Las Palmitas Mini Market, they say that they are thrilled. They're going to get $1 million, but they really want to know who won as well. And they don't know, but they say that they have a lot of regulars who come in and they want to know.
Well, we're so happy, especially we are more happy for the winner, It could be she, it could be he, we don't know yet.
And that store, John, is only a couple of blocks down from Skid Row, and the owners say a lot of homeless people buy tickets sometimes, and those who live and work in the area, so could get really interesting if it turns out to have been a homeless person who went from homeless to being a billionaire overnight. But whoever's got it, the California Lottery is saying, get your affairs in order. You've got a year to turn it in. You don't need to do it immediately. Figure everything out because your life is going to change.
Think about hiring a team of advisors, maybe legal advisors, financial advisors.
And under California law, their name is going to be made public when they come forward, so they won't be able to remain anonymous. So she says, know that people are going to be coming after you. Your life may be in danger, all of that. And there have been a few people today, not just that one woman, claiming that they won as a joke or for whatever reason. And so they say there will be a forensic process of looking at surveillance cameras and everything else to figure out who the rightful owner is, even if somebody comes forward with it, to make sure they didn't steal it and all of that. But typically it takes some time. They say it could be, it wouldn't be surprising 9-10 months for somebody to get everything in order and then do it. And she says,
there may be people trying to claim that they have the winning ticket, and maybe they do, but they still have to follow that process, and there would be no way for us to verify today in a formal process that would vet any person. That is a process that's going to take some time.
And that cash value, $558 million, and this isn't it. You and I can still win Mega Millions. Is it $720 million for tomorrow night?
That's
rising,
chump change.
So,
I don't play until
if it's not $1 billion,
right,
you don't even
right.
play.
Couple questions. You mentioned forensic. Every convenience store has a camera, and the lotto tickets are time stamped. So somebody at the store can conceivably go through the videotape, find out who they think was in proximity, even down to the minute, who bought that ticket. And, like you mentioned, they could be in danger. I guess, I read a lot of crime novels, I guess, but you better protect that ticket.
Yeah, I can promise you they're already doing that, looking at video. I assume that the store is letting them do it. The store seems very pleased with all of the attention today and everything that they're getting. But they say that is typical because when the person comes in, somebody always claims that the ticket was stolen from them. There was one in California not that long ago where the winner came forward. It was one of these big ones, and then somebody sued the winner, claiming that was their ticket and that they were burglarized and it was stolen from them. So they can do a little bit of background on that. In that case, the lottery said no, that they had done an investigation and they were sure that the person who presented the ticket was the rightful owner. That's going back and looking at the video cameras, talking to people who sold the tickets, all of that they will do that. But sure, they may know tonight that it was, let's say a woman with brown hair, but beyond that, they're not going to know until somebody comes forward.
What was the cash value of the ticket?
$558 million.
And that's before taxes?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so
what, like $250, $300 million?
Yeah. $1 billion, it goes quick, doesn't it?
It does. Or you could do the annual annuity and get $1 billion.
Do you know there was this, I don't know if it happened here in Illinois or as a national story, it's one of these big jackpots, and somebody flipped in line, let somebody cut in line in front of them, and I don't remember how it turned out. Either the person who cut in line, they both did quick picks, or the person who put himself or herself won back by graciously allowing some. I can't remember how it ended, but they flipped in the line and somebody won, and the other person thought, wow.
It's like not getting on a flight and then something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And you would hope that the person who wins, come on, give them $5 or $10 million. Be like, you know what? This should have been yours.
That's how, when you're a lottery winner, that's how you become poor once again.
Well, that is true.
I had a coworker years ago. He only won, I'm guessing $180,000 or something like that, young guy. And we advised him at that time, put it away where you can't, buy something nice that you'd like to have, whatever, some luxury item, even a car, but then everything else put away. And the eighth wonder of the world is a compound interest. And by the time you're ready to buy a house, that should be, if not a house, it could be at least a sweet down payment on a house. And no, within a year.
Didn't do it. Went out and spent it.
It was gone. A lot of trips to Nashville, a lot of trips to Vegas.
That's how it normally goes. Most lottery winners, maybe not most, but you hear a lot of them, they've got no money in a few years. When you win $1 billion, it's going to go a lot longer distance than whatever that was, 158,000. But still, maybe you give it away and you party a lot and it goes away fast. Well,
if you won the ticket, and what neighborhood was this? Downtown?
Downtown, the Fashion District, Skid Row.
Oh, and hold on a second. My wife's in Los Angeles right now, and she's at the Fashion District.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something? Huh.
That'd be amazing.
You would think I would have received a phone call by now.
No,
maybe not.
She's gone.
Maybe not. She's gone. Anyway, so, we'll see what happens. Interesting. Thanks so much, Alex. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Tim Scott seems like the perfect candidate, but maybe not the perfect guy at the right time.
I'm announcing today that I'm running for President of the United States of America.
And if that doesn't work, maybe Vice President of the United States of America. His failures to gain traction reveal that even the most accomplished and well-liked candidates entering at the right point in their career supposedly might not be enough. I'm reading from my next guest piece. He is a national political correspondent for Politico.com, author of The Recast. He's a pretty good golfer, expert lover of fine whiskey. He did a deep dive on Tim Scott. So, Tim Scott posts some of the highest favorability ratings in the presidential primary field. He's well-liked by donors and the conservative media. And with Ron DeSantis sputtering, he appears to have an opening. There's just one problem so far. The GOP electorate just ain't buying it. Let's welcome Brakkton Booker to Double the Us. Brakkton, thanks for your time. Is it just the fact that Tim Scott may be too polite for MAGA country?
It might be. It might be. But I will say that, we give MAGA country a lot of play in the Republican primary, but that's not all that comprises of a Republican electorate, right? There are some quarters of the Republican Party that are looking to move beyond MAGA, and those that are looking to get beyond MAGA. Certainly, Tim Scott is one of those candidates that has caught a lot of people's eye.
I would agree with you. I think the guy has tremendous qualifications. The problem is, how do you attract, what's left of whatever the moderate Republican sector is nowadays without turning off Trump and DeSantis voters? I mean, I don't understand how you can attract one group without turning off the other.
Well, that seems to be the tightrope that Scott and other candidates are trying to do. You will never see Tim Scott going against Donald Trump. You may see him punch a little bit at DeSantis since he seems to be the candidate that's in free fall right now. But you're not going to see Tim Scott go on the offensive for Donald Trump for a couple of reasons. One, they actually get along pretty well. Trump said this in an interview over the weekend with Fox News that they get along pretty well and they worked on opportunity zones together. And Tim Scott actually joked about, maybe Trump will be his VP, but he joked like, it's too soon to make that kind of call in this campaign.
But you've done a deep dive on this guy, Brakkton Booker. Is he really auditioning for VP at this point with Nikki Haley and maybe a couple others?
look, I mean, the campaign will say absolutely not. He's running to win the nomination. But I've talked to a number of strategists that say in order for you to even make a challenge to get your campaign over the single-digit threshold that he seems to be stuck in, and survey after survey, you're going to have to attack someone or something. So far, his ire has been trained on Democrats, which is, perfectly fine, but he's got, 11 other candidates that he's got to get through if he wants to actually challenge for the nomination. So, let's put Trump aside since he is dominating the Republican field. He's got to narrow this field a little bit. So who would he go after to kind of like make his path a little bit easier? It's unclear because a lot of folks saying Scott is so nice that he won't attack, but the Republican electorate is looking for a fighter. They want to know that you're going to go in and kind of wreck or at least disrupt some of the systems. And Tim Scott being an insider, being a long-term senator for the past decade, it's hard to be someone you're not if you're Tim Scott, and that seems to be his biggest challenge right now.
We're doing a deep dive on Tim Scott here. Brakkton Booker is here, national political correspondent for Politico.com. Also, as you pointed out in your piece, Iowa, the GOP there has a long history of kind of flirting with African-American Republican presidential candidates, Ben Carson, Herman Cain, others, but they really don't turn out for them. In the end, they don't vote for them. Why?
Well, look, I mean, that's been a question I've been trying to answer for the last 10 years or so. It seems that early on in the year before Iowa voters vote in the caucuses, there seems to be this flirtation where black candidates will get high up in the polls, maybe even lead some of the polls in Iowa. But for some reason, when it becomes fall or it becomes late in the winter, those candidates seem to fall off, and more traditional candidates end up being the preferred choice for a lot of voters. Now, look, no one I spoke to in Iowa or otherwise in other states said that race played a factor. And, I'm inclined to believe them, although when you look at the data, and it shows that these candidates are not catching on when the caucuses roll around, there might be something underlying there that we can't quite understand. Look, I don't want to say it's a Bradley effect type of thing where when surveyors call and who are conducting surveys that they say, hey, we like this candidate, but we just can't bring ourselves to vote for him. I think there's other things involved with this, and something that I learned over the course of the reporting, certainly when Ben Carson was high in the polls in 2016, everybody was riding high and thinking that he could pull off this upset, and then some foreign policy stuff happened, a bombing in Paris, and then all the conversation began to turn to foreign policy, which was not his strong suit and had no real foreign policy chops. And that's where you saw the change end up coming when, it ended up being Ted Cruz that ended up winning the caucuses in 2016, with Trump being close second and Marco Rubio third. Ben Carson came in a distant fourth.
It seems to me that Tim Scott is a formidable candidate based on his retail political skills. He can work a room as well as anybody, can he?
Oh, my gosh. When you see Tim Scott on the campaign trail, the audiences love him. He tells lots of jokes. He has self-deprecating humor. He will, at times, switch his cadence and it sounds like he's a preacher. And I think all this goes a long way to, get the crowd engaged, number one. But two, he uses that to break down his audience and let them know that, he's a real human. He's got a soft side. He's somebody you can have a beer with, because a lot of voters want to know that, hey, can I have a beer with this guy and have a conversation with him? I think Tim Scott checks all those boxes. With the biggest issue I think that we discussed here is this whole fighting spirit. Republicans want to take back the White House. They are sick of losing the popular vote and so many of the previous election cycles. It's unclear that folks view Tim Scott as that fighter, that warrior.
You don't need a fighter if you're going to be VP for Donald Trump. You just take the VP gig and wait for your time. I think he may be Trump's running mate. We'll see. Brakkton Booker, thank you very much. How's your golf game?
Oh, it's not where it needs to be. I've been spending too much time working, but I'm hoping to get out there and work on my swing a little bit, work on my short game especially.
And what's your favorite fine whiskey?
Oh man, I love a Basil Hayden, but I will say like my ultimate favorite is Johnny Walker Blue. I can't afford it all the time, but like, those special occasions, that is my go-to.
I just had the Basil Hayden Dark Rye last week, and it was terrific.
That's good sipping right there.
Nice meeting you. I'll read more at Politico.com. Have a terrific evening.
You too.
This is John Howell Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Well, the scientist and military intelligence officer leading the Pentagon's task force of UAPs, which we still call UFOs, says being caught off guard, oh my goodness, by intelligent or extraterrestrial technical supremacy remains a top concern as investigators analyze 800 cases of mysterious sightings by the U.S. military dating back decades. So that's the backstory. Now let's welcome Ike Ejiochi, working for ABC News in D.C. Well, who is Dr. Sean Kilpatrick, and why are Republicans so excited about him?
Well, essentially what we're seeing right now are Republicans getting ready to hold this hearing they're going to have next week that essentially is going to try to explain exactly what's been going on in these skies. As you said before, 800 cases of mysterious sightings reported by U.S. military personnel that dates back for quite some time. Now, what we're going to know is essentially what we're seeing, rather, is just last year, Congress establishing an office to coordinate efforts across pretty much all the federal agencies. They're trying to figure out what exactly these objects are, not only in the air, but outer space, but also underwater. And now what they're saying is essentially that all these cases that they've been reviewing, well, a vast majority of them are actually explainable. A lot of the reported phenomenon are essentially attributed to things like balloons, drones, debris, or even large animals like big birds, believe it or not. But nevertheless, Americans, they're still not convinced. A new 2021 Pew Research survey shows that 65% of Americans actually believe intelligent life exists beyond Earth. And a majority, 51%, say that the UAPs under investigation by the government are actually likely proof of contact.
How many of the witnesses will be folks who reside in trailer parks down south?
Well, that's the thing. These, not necessarily complaints, but sightings, they are coming from a large, rather, vast array of areas. Some of them are more populated than not. But nevertheless, a lot of these sightings are actually coming from U.S. Navy and Air Force personnel, those that have seen these things when they're on patrol or what have you. Now, the DOD, essentially, Sean Kilpatrick, who's kind of like a laser and materials physicist, but he's with the DOD. He essentially is saying that the proliferation of conspiracy theories spawned by these UAPs and so on and so forth, although the government is looking at them, they're kind of causing like a little sense of bipartisan urgency on Capitol Hill. We're already starting to see lawmakers really respond to this on both sides. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's backed by other top Democrats, essentially is proposing legislation that would force the National Archives to collect and publicly release records related to UAPs within 25 years of when they were created, unless there's some compelling national security concern. Nevertheless, we're still seeing Republicans also chase after a lot of these theories, rather unproven whistleblower allegations, that the government is in secret possession of intact and partially intact alien spacecraft, which, of course, the Pentagon says is unsubstantiated.
Well, I believe there's life out there, just to be clear. But I don't believe that anything's being illegally withheld from Congress. I think this is another kind of circus act next week. This happens next Wednesday?
Exactly. This is slated for next Wednesday, where you're going to have a lot of these whistleblowers and other government officials come and testify on Capitol Hill.
There's a lot of must-see TV coming out of D.C. these days.
There really is. There really is, from all over the place, especially what's coming out from the administration. Whether it's either, President Biden trying to tout his Bidenomics, or if we're talking about UFOs, or even some presidential candidates like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Capitol Hill, testifying that he isn't racist or anti-Semitic. A lot of must-see TV from Capitol Hill, controversial or extraterrestrial, let's say.
Ike Ejiochi, thanks so much for your time again today. We appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Take care.
We're going to have witnesses who can speak frankly to the public about their experiences. We've had a heck of a lot of pushback about this hearing. We've had members of Congress who fought us. We've had members of the intelligence community and also the Pentagon. Even NASA backed out on us. There are a lot of people who don't want this to come to light.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
A group of civic leaders, transportation experts, and community advocates are urging Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson to please help secure sustainable funding for public transit, and build a faster and more reliable system across the region. A little trouble here. They have a transportation subcommittee set up, co-chaired by our old friend, RTA Board Chairman Kirk Dillard. There's a number of other people involved. A group of more than 30 experts from across all the industries and sectors. They have spent the last 2 months developing some policy recommendations for Mayor Brandon and his team, and it's called Transit is the Answer. It's RTA's strategic plan for the future. It's important. To discuss the same, let's welcome, I believe, for a first visit to this program, Leanne Redden. She's the executive director of the RTA. Leanne, thanks for your time. Appreciate your patience here. What are some of the specific goals that are in this plan?
Well, fundamentally, we are looking to increase funding for public transportation because we are facing a fiscal cliff in 2026, and if we want to maintain and support the transit system that we know it today and hopefully even improve and make it better, we are going to need additional monies.
So RTA's projected $730 million operating budget gap, is that in play this year or next year?
We anticipate reaching that deficit in 2026. So we've got a little bit of time, but we recognize that it's going to take some time and effort in our conversations, both with the public and the riders and elected officials, to really help everybody understand kind of what the challenges are and what's at stake.
The sustainable funding that is necessary, where does that come from? The feds, state, raising fares, cutting services, dealing with the new contracts? I mean, how are we going to reach this?
So fundamentally, we know that typically transit agencies only really have two levers in terms of their operating budgets, and that's sort of raising fares and cutting service. And we know, though, the nature of this kind of deficit that we're facing is it's not a viable option to do either of those two things, because what they do is create kind of this downward spiral where it drives further ridership away. Our system historically has really been too dependent on fare revenue, and with the pandemic and the impact it has had on transit ridership and fundamentally the way people are sort of living and working, we are not receiving that fare revenue that we had typically historically relied on. So as a result, we know we are going to need additional public funding to support the transit network. And that's why our conversations with elected officials and riders and the public at large are going to continue to sort of help people think through what those challenges are and how we might fix it.
But do you have to lean more on Springfield or more on D.C.?
So probably Springfield for sort of state and local monies. Historically, the federal government for big transit systems like ours doesn't really provide a lot of money on the operating side. Those monies typically come through on the capital side from the federal government. So it will be focused more at the local and the state level.
Plus, to get riders back post-pandemic, I know they're coming back slowly but surely, but still we have to ensure that the CTA in particular is safe. Are you involved in those discussions as far as putting more police, not only on the CTA, but on Metro as well?
So we know that safety and security across the entire transit system is an important factor and really something that everybody cares about. And we want to make sure that the transit system is safe for everybody who wants to ride. You mentioned the Mayor's transition report, and within there are recommendations around safety and security. And as our chairman who served on that transition committee for the mayor, one of those key recommendations is to put together, for example, a safety security summit, recognizing that safety and security is not just about sort of policing. It's a bigger, complex issue, thinking about how do we address public safety across our transit network, from, homelessness issue, from a mental health issue, from more of the traditional safety security side of things. We know it's going to have to be a multifaceted approach. We are excited that the mayor has incorporated that into his transition, and actually we will be working with them to try and advance all those efforts.
Talking here with Leanne Redden. She's the executive director of the RTA. So I understand when it comes to, you mentioned the homeless who utilize public transportation to spend a lot of time there, obviously. And I know that the mantra is treatment, not trauma, when you're dealing with responses to issues either on trains or buses. But in keeping with treatment, not trauma, that being said, I think I don't have the answer to this, but how do you remove unruly passengers when they don't want to get off?
Well, that's part of the complexity and the challenges, I think, in this whole conversation. And that's why we know that sort of the transit operators aren't going to be the full part of the entirety of the solution. We have to bring kind of this multi-pronged, multifaceted, layered approach to addressing all of these issues. Transit is sometimes also sort of seen through the lens of what's happening in the broader region. And, I think that's the perspective we want to take and ensure that, we are taking a holistic approach.
I think a lot of passengers think, okay, it's good to have professionals involved, because otherwise, we're told since 9/11, you see something, you say something, get involved. But that being said, we had a horrific event in national headlines out of New York recently that's yet to be settled. You don't know when you want to get involved in something that you see on public transportation. You put yourself at risk physically and maybe legally. I know it's expensive, but I think we're going to have to add more professional security folks to both trains and buses. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is a key component of the conversations, and how do we, with the mayor's office and others, collectively work to solve some of those problems. I think that is the challenge and the issues that we have to grapple with.
Leanne Redden, thanks for your time this afternoon. We'll check back in as this process continues.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
John Howell, Essential Cuts. Check back every weekday for another episode of John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.